Everybody saying good morning. What is this? No energy at all. Good. Okay, so today it's not a very long topic. We are going to start with peptic ulcer disease. Gastritis has been covered for you people? Yes or no? Gastritis হয়েছে কি হয়নি তাড়াতাড়ি বল Gastritis হয়নি Okay, so what we'll do is, I'm just going to tell you gastritis in short so that you can understand what is peptic ulcer disease, okay? Okay, I think everybody is familiar with the parts of stomach grossly. We all know that it comes from the esophagus and then stomach starts, there is a GE junction, there is cardia fundus body antrum and pylorus, right? And then starts the first part of duodenum. This is important because ulcer is specific to certain regions, okay? Peptic ulcer disease specific to certain regions of the stomach. Okay, again, this is the normal histology, important. So, this is the lumen of the stomach, okay? And then the mucosa starts. So, inside the lumen, the first layer that is present is the mucosa, okay? After that, there is muscularis mucosae, submucosa, muscularis propria, and then serosa. Okay, let's start. So, peptic ulcer disease is actually a complication of chronic gastritis, right? That is why we'll have some background. So, gastritis, of course, it results from mucosal injury. We'll read what are those factors in a while. So, when neutrophil is present, the lesion is referred to as acute gastritis. We all know acute. Most of the times it is neutrophil. If this injury keeps continuing, then it goes into a chronic phase, chronic gastritis. However, the chronic gastritis is less severe, but it has a longer, it has a longer time frame. When cell injury, regeneration are present, but inflammatory cells are absent or very few inflammatory cells are present, then we refer to that disease as gastropathy. Okay, so these are some of the factors. This is a pictorial representation of all the defensive and offensive mechanisms of the gastric mucosa. Okay, we'll come back to this. So what happens? What is the healthy gastric state? In a healthy stomach, there is a precise balance between the damaging and the protecting factors that are present in the stomach. Okay, so what are the things that can damage a normal stomach? Gastric acidity, we all know for digestion, hydrochloride is produced, hydrochloric acid, by the parietal cells and peptic enzymes are produced, right? So they, help in digesting the food that we ingest. However, there is no digestion of our own stomach tissue, right? How is that possible? Because we have certain protective mechanisms. Roll number 5. Where is roll number 5? Roll number 5 is absent? Oh, present. Okay. Yes. Now tell me, what did I tell you? What are the... How is this balance maintained? Yeah, think and tell me. What were you doing? Sleeping? Now tell me. This is how the balance is maintained. You have to understand also, no, what's written. No. How is the balance maintained in the stomach? Why is the acid that is being produced not digesting of our own or intestine, stomach, everything? Sorry? Protective mechanisms are there, which we are going to go to next. So basically, whenever there is a situation like this, there's a balancing factor also. Why are these two things important? Gastric acid and peptic enzymes? For what? for digesting the food that we are eating. Okay, so of course these are required for digesting the food that we are eating, but they are detrimental to our own tissues, right? That is why we have some protective mechanisms which will not let these things harm our own body tissue, right? Okay, so what are the factors that will defend the gastric mucosa? Will not let any damage come to it. So, surface mucus secretion, what does it do? It is produced by the epithelial cell. It creates a physical barrier between the acid and the stomach mucosa. It will not let the acid come in contact with the stomach mucosa. Then there is bicarbonate secretion, okay, into the mucus. We all know that what will bicarbonate do to the acid? It will neutralize the acid, right? Okay, so this is again a chemical barrier, okay. Then mucosal blood flow, what does that do? It is going to supply enough nutrients, oxygen, which is essential for any kind of ongoing damage that is happening to the tissue. It is going to increase the tissue viability. Apical surface membrane transport. What is this? This basically consists of a complex system. I'm sure you would have studied all this in biochem physiology. Complex system of ion exchange mechanisms, right? Which are going to help maintain the pH, okay? Then epithelial regenerative capacity. It again enables rapid replacement of damaged epithelial tissue. Next is prostaglandin synthesis, okay? Again, it maintains mucosal integrity, promotes healing and enhances protective mechanisms. We'll read about it in detail in a while. Okay, now coming to ulcer. So what is an ulcer? So now we are going to differentiate ulcer and erosions. Many times when you get an endoscopy report, right? Sometimes they are going to describe in the description or in the impression, they'll write multiple ulcers or a single ulcer, or sometimes they'll write erosions. So you should know what is the difference. So, breach in the mucosa of the alimentary tract that extends through the muscularis mucosae into submucosa or deeper. That is an ulcer. So, what does that mean? Okay, so that means anything that is disrupting this part and disrupting and entering the muscularis mucosa, this thin layer of muscle, and going beyond, that is an ulcer. Erosion is only epithelial disruption within the mucosa, but there is no breach of the muscularis mucosae. Rule number 10. Yes, tell me what is an ulcer and an erosion.
Breach in the mucosa of the alimentary tract that exits through the muscularis mucosa into the submucosa or deeper. That is called ulcer, and the erosion is only the epithelial disruption with the muscularis, no breach into the muscularis mucosa.
Okay, now coming to peptic ulcer. So, peptic ulcer disease refers to chronic mucosal ulceration affecting the duodenum or stomach and is almost always associated with H. pylori infection, NSAIDs, cigarette smoking, and sometimes many other factors also. Okay, so what is this thing that we just saw? What is the full form of this? Yeah, very good. Helicobacter pylori, right? So it can cause, what all can it cause in the stomach? It can cause acute gastritis. It can lead to chronic gastritis. And after that, if it keeps persisting, it can cause peptic ulcer disease. Yes, it is also related to carcinoma of the stomach, okay? Okay, so next, most often solitary lesions that occur in any portion of the GI tract exposed to aggressive action of the acid or peptic juice, usually solitary lesions are less than 4 centimeter. Okay, what are the most common sites? Most common sites are first part of duodenum and stomach, usually the antrum. Okay, at the G junction, in the setting of GERD or Barrett esophagus, this can also occur. What is GERD? Gastroesophageal reflux disease. What happens in GERD? So, stomach is supposed to have acid, right? So, acid is supposed to be in the stomach. So, due to so many factors, what happens is there is acid reflux. You know, the acid comes back from the stomach into the duodenum. There is reflux of this acid, into the esophagus. There is reflux of this acid into the esophagus. Okay, GERD. And due to that, what happens? Something known as Barrett's. Okay, so what happens is there is metaplasia. I hope you all know that. Okay, and then that can lead to Barrett's esophagus. Okay, where else can this occur? Most common sites we already know. It is going to be stomach, antrum and first part of duodenum. Other than that, where else can it occur? We have already seen in the setting of GERD Barrett's and in the margins of gastrojejunostomy. What is gastrojejunostomy? It's a surgical procedure, okay, where you anastomose the part of the stomach with jejunum, okay. So, in the margins of that gastrojejunostomy margin, peptic ulcer disease can occur, okay. Then multiple ulcers in ZES. What is ZES? Yes, Zollinger-Ellison syndrome. Okay, what happens? Here, there is production of gastrin-secreting neuroendocrine tumors called gastrinomas. No need to know so much of detail, at least for this topic. Okay, later on when you study neuroendocrine tumors, you will come across all this. So what happens is, in Zollinger-Ellison syndrome, there are gastrinomas which produce excessive acid, right? Which can again lead to refractory peptic ulcer disease. Okay, what is refractory? Very difficult to heal, right? Okay, then there is another condition, Meckel's diverticulum. Okay, so what is this? Meckel's diverticulum is basically persistence of embryonal structures. Okay, I am sure you would have read it in embryology. Okay, we will not go into the details of it, but sometimes this Meckel's diverticulum can contain ectopic gastric mucosa. Okay, you know the rule of 2, 2, 2, 2 in Meckel's diverticulum, you would have read it. Okay, so this itself is an abnormal structure, Meckel's diverticulum, remnant or persistent structure from the embryo, and this can sometimes contain ectopic gastric mucosa. It can contain so many other tissues, ectopic tissues of the body. One of them is ectopic gastric mucosa, and again this can lead to ulcers. Okay, so some of the common sites of ulcer, you can draw this diagram. Okay, now coming to the pathogenesis in details. Okay, so what are the defense mechanisms? So basically, there is pre-epithelial, epithelial and subepithelial. Okay, pre-epithelial meaning it is present over the epithelium, secreted by the epithelial cells only, but present over the epithelium. Then comes the part where the defense mechanisms are present in the epithelial cells itself. Okay, and after that is subepithelial, meaning other things. Okay, so what is present in pre-epithelial? Mucus secretion. We already know this produces a physical barrier between the gastric mucosa and the acid. Bicarbonate secretion, again, we already know this causes a neutral pH. Epithelial, intercellular tight junctions. This prevents back diffusion of H plus ions. Okay, so it will not let the H plus ions come out, so it will reduce the acidity. It will maintain a balance. Restitution migration of existing cells along the exposed basement membrane to fill the defect. So what happens is, suppose there is some defect in the gastric mucosa. Other cells existing along the same gradient will move to that defect and cover up the defect, okay, protecting the exposed area. Then epithelial regenerative capacity, we already know whenever there is a injury, healing will occur. For that, good blood supply is required, nutrients, oxygen, etc. We have already read again apical surface membrane transport. Next, subepithelial. Subepithelial factors. Okay, so we have read what are the defense mechanisms: pre-epithelial, epithelial and subepithelial, right? So in pre-epithelial we read, what did we read in pre-epithelial? Mucus and bicarbonate, okay? In epithelial, what is present? Intercellular tight junctions, restitution, migration of the existing cells, epithelial regeneration, okay, and apical surface membrane transport. Now coming to subepithelial. Again, mucosal blood flow, very important. Why? Because if the mucosal blood flow is compromised, then healing will not take place, regeneration will not take place adequately. Okay? PG synthesis, what is PG? Prostaglandin, very good. Okay, prostaglandin synthesis by the mucosal cells. What happens? What does this do? It supports the physical barrier and the chemical barrier both by increasing mucus secretion, and bicarbonate production decreases, therefore decreases the acidic environment. What else does it do? This particularly prostaglandin E and I causes vasodilation, therefore increased mucosal blood flow, therefore good regeneration and healing of the damaged parts. Roll number 20. Roll number 20. 20 is absent. Roll number 18. Mahmood likhe na. 20 absent. 18 absent. Roll number 22. 22 is absent. Okay. Roll number 27. 27, yes. Please enumerate the protective mechanisms as per the subheadings. Tell me the main subheadings and then whatever you remember in that. Okay?
There are three protective systems: pre-epithelial, epithelial and subepithelial. Under pre-epithelial comes the mucus production and the bicarbonate production. Under epithelial comes the apical transport system, the intracellular tight junctions, and restitution, migration, and under subepithelial comes the mucosal blood flow and the prostaglandin synthesis.
Okay, we just read the protective mechanisms. Now we are going to read the damaging mechanisms. What are the damaging factors? Again, Helicobacter pylori infection, NSAIDs, okay, like aspirin. It is very common nowadays, especially for old people to take NSAIDs, right? For heart diseases. So it again, this is commonly found in this peptic ulcer disease is also commonly found in old people because of use of aspirin. Okay, what does it do? It directly irritates the gastric mucosa and it also suppresses prostaglandin synthesis. Then corticosteroids can also lead to PUD. Alcohol, again, this is also a gastric irritant, okay? And what else does it cause? It can cause alcoholic cirrhosis, which can compromise the blood flow and lead to PUD. Cigarettes, of course, this decreases the mucosal blood flow and therefore the healing. Okay? We have already read about this, ZES. We know there can be something called duodenal gastric reflux, okay? Just like GERD, where reflux was occurring from stomach to esophagus, here reflux is occurring from duodenum to stomach. Is delayed gastric emptying. Okay, there are some factors which cause delayed gastric emptying. Okay, normally also when we have very high oily, fatty food, exactly, that will also cause delayed gastric emptying. Okay, so these increase the chance of PUD. Why? Because the food mixed with the acid is sitting there in the stomach for a longer period of time. Other than that, any kind of body stress, okay, ischemia, shock, or any kind of psychological stress also, like you have some very stressful work or you're studying long hours, putting in long hours, or you are not sleeping at night properly, or some people who have type A personality, okay, who are always stressed about things, or your work environment, all these things can also contribute. Okay, just know a little bit about this. How does Helicobacter pylori cause PUD? So basically, they are saying that most patients with duodenal ulcer and a large chunk, like 70% of the patients with gastric ulcer have H. pylori association. Okay, how does this cause the disease? So basically this causes increased production of pro-inflammatory cytokines like what is IL? Interleukin 1, 6, 8 and tumor necrosis factor. Okay. So what does again IL-8 do? It recruits and activates what is PMN? Yeah, polymorphonuclear cells. Polymorphs basically. Okay. This is all more detailed. Okay, now coming to gross. Okay, how does this ulcer look? This ulcer is usually more than 0.6 centimeter, but usually less than 4 centimeter. Okay, 0.6 to 4 centimeter. Again, how is the shape? Round to oval, sharply punched out defect with relatively straight walls. Okay, and how is the ulcer base? In the gastric area, the ulcer base is surprisingly clean. Why? Because digestion of all the peptic digestion of all the materials are taking place. Okay, so there will be nothing left. Every time there is some chance of healing, every time there is some deposition of healing tissues and inflammatory cells, okay, what will happen is digestion will take place and again the base will be exposed. Margins are usually level with the surrounding mucosa. Okay, if there is heaping up of these margins, that is a feature of malignant lesion. Okay, sometimes these, so this is how it looks. Okay, sometimes these PUDs can peptic ulcers can also transform into malignant lesions. Not very common, but it can. Okay. So again, differentiating the benign and the malignant ulcer. Okay. Look at this, small size and punched out margins. Here there is heaping up, rolled out margins and larger size. Okay. Again, the depth is going to vary. I already told you the depth, we call it an ulcer only when it has reached muscularis mucosae, right? Base smooth and clean due to peptic digestion. Scarring may be present and it may involve the entire thickness of the stomach, which will cause puckering of the surrounding mucosa. Okay, sometimes if there is perforation can also occur, long time exposure to these injurious factors when there is no healing, no proper healing, not treated well, suddenly the patient may present with perforation. In that case, the base of the ulcer is going to be formed by the surrounding organs, okay, like maybe the part of the pancreas, maybe there is some kind of adhesion with the surrounding organs, or it might be freely present in the abdominal cavity. That can cause perforation can cause a life-threatening complication. What is that? Peritonitis. No, this is not the end of the class. Okay, so how can this ulcer appear? This will have surface coat of purulent exudate or bacteria. This can appear even in the duodenal ulcer also. This can appear like this. There will be fibrinoid necrosis, granulation tissue, and sometimes long-standing cases there will be healing by fibrosis. This is what is present here. Okay, all inflammatory cells, granulation tissue. What happens in granulation tissue? Lots of blood vessels and inflammatory cells, right? You can see the ulcer here. Okay, what are the common clinical features? We all know that there is epigastric burning kind of pain. Sometimes patient might even present with chest pain and you might confuse it with a MI, with an MI, right? Okay, then other than that, nausea, vomiting, belching, weight loss, okay? This is very important. Pain can worsen at night and is relieved by food, okay? With penetrating ulcer, pain refers to back or left upper quadrant. Okay, and what else can happen? I already told you these are the clinical features, but sometimes the patient can also present if a patient is constantly ignoring the symptoms, okay, ignorant patients, they can often many times present with the worst complications. So what are the complications? One is iron deficiency anemia. Then there can be a massive hemorrhage. So what happens is there will be an ulcer and this ulcer is going to constantly erode into the wall of the stomach. So if small blood vessels are present, there will be some amount of hematemesis, okay? And there will be blood mixed, vomiting, all these things will happen, but no major outcome will take place. But sometimes if there is a larger vessel present, what happens is this ulcer keeps eroding into the wall of the stomach and wall of the vessel also. So suddenly there will be rupture of this large vessel and there can be excessive hemorrhage, sudden excessive bleeding, okay, which can cause, which is a life-threatening condition and it can also lead to sudden death, okay. So complications, iron deficiency anemia, hemorrhage, perforation. I already told you perforation can lead to perforation peritonitis, which is again life-threatening, okay. Then malignant changes, rare but can happen, okay. How do you treat this condition? What is PPI? Proton pump inhibitors. So you must be studying in pharma also. Okay, there are a group of drugs which are the proton pump inhibitors. Okay, we can use them. Okay, H2 blockers and proton pump inhibitors. And suppose the patient is presenting with perforation. What are you going to do? That is an emergency. The perforation needs to be repaired immediately. Patient is taken to the OT for emergency surgery, okay? And the abdominal cavity is cleaned very well. There is a wash that is given, properly washed. Abdominal cavity is washed properly. Laparotomy is done, okay? The perforation is repaired, okay? And of course, if there is bleeding and all, you are going to give supportive therapy for that. But nowadays, complications are rarer than it used to be in the past, because now we are treating H. pylori infection very well. Even before the patient can go to complications, we are giving the patients a kit. So H. pylori is decreasing. Therefore, all these complications and outcomes are also lesser. Okay, now there is another small topic. I don't think we'll be able to finish that topic today. So there is another class, revision class, on the 7th of May, along with which I'm going to take the other topic, that is intestinal TB. Okay.